I'm 60 years, I just turned 60, so probably at least double the age of many of you over here. But I did sit in the same chair as you guys did many years ago. I started my journey as a software programmer 35 years ago, 40 years ago. So I'm delighted to be here. Let me just first say it's such a pleasure and such an honor to be here. I've been working with the team for almost 3.5 years, and an engagement that I would say started when I was in a moment of crisis, and I was working with a development partner, and the project wasn't going well. And as it turned out, through their recommendation, I got introduced to Vikas, and he basically took the shovel on and said, let's try and dig ourselves out of the hole together. And that's how it started. For the first year, I would say we were in a crisis management mode, and we were just trying to get the application up and running. But 3.5 years later, I think it's just incredible what we've achieved together. I think the entire team has done a phenomenal job. We're happy to share my perspective as a customer, as a fellow techie and a programmer who has kind of sat in the same seats and walked the same shoes that you guys are. But really, this is interactive, my chance to hear from you guys and what you guys are thinking about. Happy to share any perspective I have. So in January of 2017, I kind of pulled my head up and said, so how do I want to, I'm 52 years old, how do I want to spend the rest of my life from this point on? And I decided that I wanted to play some good golf courses. And so I went to the staff at my golf club and said, hey, can you get me on to so-and-so club? And he's like, not really. I said, okay, how about so-and-so club? He says, not really. And so then I tried the avenue of calling my friends and saying, hey, can you help me? And they're like, not really. And I'm just sitting there thinking that surely in today's day and age, when people are finding their life partners on Tinder and finding their cabs on Uber and jobs on LinkedIn, I should be able to find a golf game, right? And that was really it. So I was drinking wine with my wife, and I'm like, listen, there should be an app for this. We should be able to do this. And she says, yeah, well, who's going to build it? If I could only find a high school kid who's trying to sort of raise a little bit of money, that would be great. So then the next day I'm playing golf with a friend of mine, and he's like, hey, my CTO's son is 16 years old, but he's something of a whiz-kid. So he's built a website. I know he's built a website. You want to talk to him? I'm like, sure. So I get introduced to this kid. He's all of 5'1", tiny, 16 years old. And I'm like, hey, Noah, would you like to build an app or build a website? And I'm like, sure. And 6 or 8 weeks later, we were up and running. We got a domain and we had a website. And essentially it was a website and a Google form at the back. And I was the monkey behind the curtain who was kind of doing everything manually in the back end. And it was really intended to be something for my friends and I to record our information in the same place. And then I found that every day, somebody who I had absolutely no idea who they were had somehow heard of this website and created an account. And the next thing we knew, we were 150 people. We're like, wow. I think India is just younger. And what I mean by that is you don't fully understand what no means. So therefore, you're willing to try everything. and you're willing to break it. And the attitude always tends to be, yeah, sure, let's give it a try, right? And that is fantastic. I mean, the energy level is always so much higher. And I used to tell people when I went back from Bangalore, I said, the 1 year in Bangalore that I spent with the engineering talent in Bangalore, I literally went back home feeling 5 years younger, right? Because it's the art of the possible. I just felt like the community, because it's a younger community, because it's not relying on all the mistakes and the you can't do this, you shouldn't do this mindset of a more mature environment. You know, it's just people just take everything and grab it with a positivity that's fantastic. Cultural difference, I would say, is, and it's changing quite a bit now, is there is a certain deference to authority and to hierarchy, which is ingrained into us and in India and culturally, whereas the culture in the West would very much be, I expect you to argue with me, I expect you to push back and on what I'm saying, because that's how we clarify our thinking, right? I don't expect you to agree with me, because by agreeing with me, I don't know you agreed with me because you didn't, even though you thought I was wrong, but you didn't want to tell me that, or you agreed with me because you actually agreed with what I was saying, right? So that's another cultural difference that I found, is that when working with the teams, I've had to encourage them to say, okay, you know, are we sure that we're all good with this, right? Because if not, now's the time to have that debate. And just because I'm saying I want to go north doesn't mean necessarily that that's the right thing. That's what I'm thinking. But if you think that maybe we should go west, we should have that conversation now, right? A couple of small examples, but those are the ways in which. So, I mean, I think, look, the reason I'm sitting over here is because the experience has been fantastic, right? I probably have been on reference calls with at least a half a dozen people who have been thinking about choosing DianApps, and I think Vikash and the team feel completely comfortable giving them my name because they know that what I have to say is positive, right? So it has been an absolutely fantastic experience. That doesn't mean that everything has worked perfectly, but then I don't expect it, right? So we are in the software development business. We understand that software development is messy, it's hard, and things happen, things break, and so that's just par for the course. But I am just incredibly grateful in how we have sort of traveled this journey together, because like I said, when we first got connected, I don't know about you, but it might have been scary that you were taking on essentially a completely unfamiliar and broken code written by somebody else, which was already live in production, right? So the fact that you took that risk, and your team took that risk, and your team dived in with the mindset of saying, look, right now we are in triage, right now it's an emergency room visit. We got to somehow make sure that this patient doesn't die, right? That was and that's how team gave it all, right? I mean, basically, they were available all the time. We were working on just making sure that we were doing whatever possible to stop the bleeding. That wasn't the time for us to do clever things. That wasn't the time for us to do the elegant things. That was time just to stop the bleeding, right? We were probably in that mood for about a year. Finally, we had time to breathe, and we started thinking a little bit more proactively. We started working on building different features, and that got into sort of a little bit more of a normal development cycle. I personally think, I don't know how you guys feel, but I personally think that as much as I have benefited from the team's dedication, hopefully the team's learned a little bit from me and how to manage production environments, how to work in projects where it's not a prototype, it's not something where you can do a demo and walk away. This is real stuff, real revenue, real people, and you have to live with everything you do, right? I mean, it's like, yeah, we built something 12 months ago, if you built it badly, guess what, you're still here. And you're the one who's got to fix it, right? So I think there's a different mindset that comes in working in production environments, and I think hopefully Thousand Greens is one of those projects which is, it's entrepreneurial enough that we can actually do some interesting stuff, but at the same time it's also a production project, so you have to kind of do the mature stuff. So I just find it's a great combination, as opposed to working for a big bang application or something where you may not necessarily have the creativity to do it. But yeah, no, I think the experience has been fantastic, and I think the team has learned a bit, and I've learned a lot. I think memorable and impactful might be two different things. The impactful one clearly has to be the one where I can collect money. Because if I can get the payment, then I can pay you, right? But I think probably the memorable one is, so when we started with the DianApps team, TG was essentially a transaction platform. I would say it was a skeleton with no heart, no soul. And I had always known that ultimately what we are building is a community. And the success of TG isn't going to be in the physical act of connecting with another person to play golf. It's going to be in the relationship that the community would build with each other. So we had this thing called MyTG. We called it a MyTG, but it was essentially how do we bring social into the app, right? How do we build communities? How do we enable people to build relationships, communicate with each other? And my background is not at Facebook or Instagram. I am not somebody who has an experience in what social engineering really looks like. And essentially that's what we're doing. We're doing social engineering on the app. And so that's probably been the most memorable in the sense that we're still on that journey, but we are kind of working together and saying, what are the points of interaction? How do we reinforce the right behaviors? How do we guide people to connect with each other? How do we force, right? So there's a lot of these really interesting, so the way you use Instagram or the way you use TikTok isn't by accident. These are very conscious product choices very smart people are making that are making you behave in a certain way, right? If you're doom scrolling through the reels or something, there are algorithms that are finely tuned in recognizing that that's what you're doing and therefore reinforcing that behavior. These are all social engineering things that today's apps do. And we are kind of doing that at a much, much smaller scale. I don't have a budget of billions of dollars. I'm not sort of catering to hundreds of millions of users. But in a very small microcosmic way, for our 11,000 members, that's exactly what we're doing. We're doing social engineering. And to me, I think that's the really memorable part of what we're doing together. The goofy, stupid one in the family. My wife is a marketing professional. She comes from a background of consumer marketing, And when I was bouncing ideas off, I think we were both sitting in the study, and I remember just talking to somebody and said, so what is this idea you have? I said, think of it as Tinder for golfers. And I literally put the phone down, and my wife smacked me on the head and said, you're an idiot. I'm like, well, tell me something new. I know that, but what specifically are you objecting to? But her point was that, listen, your target audience is likely to be 60-year-old white men, and I'm not entirely sure the imagery you want to create is Tinder for golf. And of course, as we thought about it, and then a little bit of sanity prevailed, we said, like, the character it actually is LinkedIn. It's not really Tinder. It's a connectivity platform. Interestingly enough, almost every single one of my users, when they, my users are 98% male. It's even though golf is actually becoming a relatively gender-neutral sport, somehow the idea of strangers connecting with each other is not something that appeals to women nearly that much. It still sort of is more a male thing. And almost every single one of them, when they get addicted to the app and their wives start asking them, so what is it that you're doing? It's their wives who are basically saying, so you're really on Tinder for golfers. So unfortunately that comparison is way too apt and way too, it just sticks, but I am publicly not allowed to repeat it.
That is really fun. So I can see some...
I think at any point in time, when presented with a decision, you make the decision with the best information available, right? And if you trust yourself, you're like, yeah. So now, that doesn't mean that every decision you make necessarily turns out to be good or the way you thought it would. The outcomes can be bad, right? That did not make the decision bad, necessarily. So that's just the way I think about life, which is, I personally think that every decision that I've made was the most appropriate decision for me with the information I had. Not every decision worked out, but I never regret a decision. So, short answer to your question is no, I'm not regretting it. Has it worked out the way I thought? I actually think it worked out way better than I thought, right? How many hours do we have?
9.
Because he's asking a question, we could be here all night. So I will say one thing to you. There is only one voluntary decision you will make in your life, right? If you think of your dimension, if you think of the dimensions of time, money, and health, when you're young, you have time and health, no money. When you're sitting where you are, you have money and health, no time. When you get as old as my parents are, or many of your parents might be, you will have time and money, no health. So there's only a short window in your life when you could potentially have all three. When that window closes is not in your control, because you don't know when you lose your health. The only decision you can proactively make is when to open that. When you basically say, this is the point in my life where at a personal level, I think I am going to trade money for time. Because the value of a minute at this point in time just became more than the value of a dollar. And only you know that answer, right? And when you know, you know. And some people never will, and some people will do it at 40, and I did it at 50. Open a beer and kebab stall at a beach. And that's something I've been dreaming of since I was 25 years old.
I mean, I think the idea that I talked about in terms of we are doing social engineering is probably still something that we kind of groping around in the dark, right? I feel like we're trying a few things and I'm not entirely sure if they are at a point where I can point to them and say there is enough evidence that it's beginning to take hold and beginning to work. So, I mean, I think it would be a travesty and a shame if we fail in that mission, because I know that that mission exists. And I'll give you a simple example. I know a lot of Thousand Greens members who actually have thriving communities they have built on WhatsApp, and they literally are called Thousand Greens on WhatsApp, right? But they find it, there are, every day I wake up to 300 messages on that group chat. And I want that to be on our platform. I want people to every Thousand Greens member to wake up in the morning and can't wait to open Thousand Greens, right? So I think that's something that still feels like we're experimenting, we're kind of trying to find our way through. I know we will, but we're not there yet.
So your favorite travel destination?
Golf.
One thing you cannot live without?
Golf.
Everything is golf.
Yeah.
Okay. So the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Best piece of advice I have ever received.
No, thank you.
My very first manager, who I was working for, I walked into his office and I said, listen, I made a big mistake. And he didn't even look up, didn't say anything. So I kept standing there and I said, hey, did you hear me? I just made a really big mistake and I screwed up. And like, great, I'm delighted, now get out of here. I'm like, what do you mean? He says, listen, if you made a mistake, that means you're trying something new, which I really like. You make the same mistake twice, you're fired. Now get out.
The most embarrassing thing that ever happened to you on the golf course?
There is this thing in golf where there are tees that are designed for different sort of players with different abilities, including there are women's tees, and there is this custom in golf where if you hit a drive and it does not cross the women's tees, then you have to drop your pants. Not fun.
Okay, so Jaipur so far, hit or miss?
Sorry?
Jaipur so far, hit or miss?
Huge hit, but I would not go back to Ambed Fort and do the sound and light show.
Apart from that, there are many other more amazing things in
Yes.
Jaipur yet to be explored. Okay, describe DianApps in one word.
Young and energetic. Hopefully recognize how fortunate you are. I grew up in an India where there were no opportunities, right? And there were no jobs, there were no multinationals. In my class of 240 kids in engineering, 200 left the country and went to the US because that's what you did. You had nothing to do here. And I see every single one of you, and there is just so much going on. You have access to experiences and you have access to opportunities that are just absolutely fantastic. So if there's one piece of advice that I would just give you is, I don't know what sort of keeps you awake at night and what worries you carry, but hopefully you guys step back and just recognize just what an awesome time it is to be in India right now, and hopefully you make the most of it, because I think the next 30, 40, 50 years are really India's sort of half century to enjoy. Geopolitically, India is well suited. You have the youngest population of any country in the world. The opportunities are limitless. Just make the most of it.
Well, Manish, like whatever you have shared with us, it was really, really inspiring for us. And we would like to thank you for sharing all of these insights with us. And on the behalf of DianApps family, we would like to extend a very heartfelt thanks to you.